This episode is brought to you by Hill's Pet Nutrition. Every shelter pet deserves a second chance, and you're making it possible for thousands of them every day. Because when you feed your pet Hill's, you help feed a shelter pet, which helps make them healthy, happy, and more adoptable, changing their life forever. So they can change yours. Over 14 million shelter pets fed and adopted. Science did that. Visit hillspet.com/podcast to learn more. This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Golden 20s podcast. My name is Sadie, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tegan.
Hey.
And today's episode, I feel, is maybe kind of spring cleaning related, but we are spring cleaning our mental health and going to be talking all about a digital detox. So to kick things off, so what this means, digital detox, essentially we're just going to be talking about screen time, ways to reduce your screen time, ways to have a little bit of a digital reset, things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But before we jump into it, we did a fun poll over on our Instagram to ask what your guys' average screen time is. So let's maybe start there and then tag. Maybe we can also share what our average screen time is, which is something I feel like we've never talked about on the podcast before, so it could just be interesting conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we did a little poll and the options were less than an hour, 1 to 3 hours, 3 to 5 hours, or 5+ hours. And the winning category was 3 to 5 hours a day, which seems like a lot of hours, but also wasn't surprising to me. Because I know that the average Canadian spends 2 hours on TikTok. So I'm like, that's just one app. So it's got to be like when you're throwing in everything else. So that didn't surprise me. I am shook that one person said that they had less than an hour of screen time. Like, I can't even fathom that. I feel like I'd have more just from texting people. So
yeah,
that shook me, but everything else I was like, okay.
Yeah, totally. And I think too, the other big thing is we also said this is just for mobile devices, because obviously this would change. And I think there is a function on Apple devices to like track across devices. So if you have an iPhone, a Mac laptop or computer, even like an Apple TV, I don't know if it can count that, but it's like it can measure across devices, where it would literally be my entire working or my entire waking day. Yeah. And actually I saw a meme, I'll post it on our Instagram this week if I remember, but it was like, I wake up, look at my small screen, go to my medium screen for 8 hours, then I log off and watch like my big screen for the rest of the night. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that is literally what we do, you know, where your mobile screen time is what we're talking about now. Yeah. And I think the biggest addiction, but considering everybody works on computers, like it's like, imagine we talked about cross device, this would be like double digit hours. But anyways, so we had, like you said, the one vote for less than 1 hour. 33% of people said they were 1 to 3 hours, 38% of people 3 to 5 hours, and 25% of people said 5 hours. So, or 5 hours plus, sorry. Yeah. So definitely interesting. I didn't know what to expect, actually. Because again, I feel like I haven't talked about this with anybody. So I'm like, I feel like my screen time is low, but I don't have anything to compare it to. So that's why I was like, let's share our own too, because I'm interested to know.
Yeah. I think mine is high. I'm in the 5+ hour category, but I also work off my phone. So then, like, I don't know how much time I would be able to say I'm like shaving off if I wasn't counting work time. Like, I do freelancing and I do like TikTok account management. And so I am usually like checking those accounts and posting content and editing content from my phone. So that does count towards it, but I feel like it wouldn't save me that much time. But I keep seeing this meme that's like, I use my big screen at work, and then as a treat, I use my little screen. And I'm like, that's me, where I'm like, oh, I need a break. Time to look at my little screen. So that's kind of where I'm at. The only thing that I'm quite strict about is I don't use my phone before bed. I do use it to like listen to audiobooks, but I don't think that would count unless like I think it would only count if it was me like pressing play and pressing pause. So like I'll still have my phone in my bedroom and it's still beside me and it's my alarm clock, but I don't use social media before bed, and I don't like look at my calendar. Like I try not to have the blue light in my eyes, but I do use it in the morning before work, which is maybe controversial, but it's the way I rock. I usually use it on my lunch as well, and then throughout my day.
Yeah. I actually think this is why, too, I think my screen time's low, because the screen time I've heard is like from the YouTubers I watch and like content creators, and to your point, they all work on their phones. Yeah. So their screen time is like way over even 10 hours a day. But it's like, well, yeah, when you're on your phone editing photos or taking videos and doing that stuff, like that would definitely inflate it. Yeah. However, to your point, I do think there's still like you need to set boundaries for yourself and find times to disconnect from your phone, even if you are on it more than like the average person for work. But for me, my screen time, it's funny actually, because you brought up TikTok, and that is definitely something I'm so conscious of. Yeah. But my screen time's usually like 2 hours to 3 hours a day. And any time that it's more, it's always because I got stuck into a TikTok rabbit hole, like for multiple hours or an hour multiple times throughout the day, where my screen time will go up to 5 hours sometimes, and that's when I'm like, my mental health is an all-time low. Where I'm like, why do I feel so weird? Why do I feel so bad? What's wrong with me? Like, or I'm like laying on the couch rotting and I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with me? And then I'll look at my screen time and be like, oh my gosh, this is what's wrong. So I feel like that whole feeling is what we're going to talk about in the rest of this episode. Is if you're feeling that way, if you're feeling like maybe your screen time, or maybe you haven't even thought of how your screen time is the reason you're feeling that way, chances are it is. It could be a good little self-reflection point for you. But yeah, I think that's kind of, I don't know, just something to kick off the rest of this episode.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very pro digital detox. I keep seeing people talk about this as like a dopamine detox, but the idea is basically trying to use your phone less, or trying to schedule entire days where you're not using your phone at all. And the ideas behind that is, one, technology is super stressful, whether it's like social media, even just like I have my calendar on there, that stresses me out. I have my email on there, that stresses me out. Seeing text from people, whatever it is, all of these things stress me out. And I'm like, okay, I just need to not be looking at this and life will be good. Another big motivator for me is sleep. If you've been listening to this podcast, you've heard me yap on and on about it, but devices can disrupt sleep. Every single doctor I've talked to about sleep is like, don't even put that thing in your room. I'm not quite at that level, but they're very passionate about it, and they're doctors. And especially the use right before bed. I talked about the blue light. This is a big thing that people are talking about. The idea is that our sunlight is yellow in our eyes. This sounds so stupid the way I'm saying it, but your phone is shooting out blue light, and it's tricking like the animal part of your brain into thinking the sun's still up, so I can't go to sleep yet, which is obviously not true. And back in the day, it was like the sun went down, it was dark out, your body would get tired because it'd be like, okay, dark, sleep time. Where now your brain's not getting those signals. So that's a big part of it. It's also hard to enforce work-life balance if you're constantly on your phone, especially if you like see notifications from work, see emails from work, have your calendar there. Like, it's really hard to not be working if your reward after work is to go on your little device and all your work stuff is still on there. And then, like you mentioned, Sadie, social media is a whole other thing. We've talked about it in a couple other episodes, but it can be toxic. It can affect your mental health. Like, FOMO is a big thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think the technology is stressful is the most, like, the thing that stood out to me the most, and it's the least obvious, because I think this is what really impacts my mental health the most, where consuming that much information
Yeah.
in such a short amount of time spikes my anxiety out of the world, like out of this world. Like,
Yeah.
it is just crazy, and it's constant, right? Like, it's news headlines, it's updates about your friends and family, it's products that influencers are selling you. It's just so much information.
Yeah.
Also, like, ads from companies in that newsfeed as you're scrolling. Like, it's so much information that you literally spend milliseconds consuming before you scroll and you're on to the next thing. And it's like, when you actually think about that, like, yeah, no wonder it's so stressful and anxiety inducing. And I also love what you mentioned about getting texts and things. I think the worst, and this isn't me, maybe this is me kind of complaining, but the worst was I was in a bridal party, I think for 2 different weddings at the same time. And oh my gosh,
chats.
you guys. And this was also like peak COVID. So it was like everybody's communicating via video calls and via text and checking in on each other, you know. But it was like we had the group chat in iMessage. Then there was also a group chat in WhatsApp. Then there was also the group chat in Facebook. Then there's still like my family group chat. Then there's also now the Bachelorette group chat now. There's also my friend normal text conversations. And it's like I have so many group chats and conversations across so many different apps. It was honestly so overwhelming for me. And I was like, this is a great problem to have, because it's like, I have so many people I want to talk to that I can talk to. And, you know, it's nice, but at the same time, it's also okay if it's completely overwhelming. So I feel like a learning coming out of that was, I do not use WhatsApp unless it's absolutely necessary for something like a group chat. But I'm like, I need all my messages consolidated into like my iMessage.
Yeah, me too.
And sometimes Messenger. But even that, I'm like, because then you also have DMs on your like Instagram and, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, oh my God, it's just so much. But it's become so normalized at the same time, where we don't even process how overwhelming it is.
Yeah. Well, I keep seeing people talking about like the nostalgia of when the internet was a place, because it was like you'd have to sit at your computer in your computer room at the desk. And it's just like, it's not like that anymore, right? Like, the internet's everywhere. And now I feel like people are so entitled, where people are like, if they're not getting a response right away, they're angry. And I'm like, why is that the norm? And I get it, because I'm an overthinker. I'm sensitive. Sometimes if I text someone, like if I text you, Sadie, and then you don't respond right away, maybe not anymore as I get older, but being younger, it'd be like, what's going on? Why is she mad at me? Right. I think maybe it helps that now there's like read receipts. So it's like, oh, she didn't read it. And it's like, I know that you could just read it by looking and it doesn't say, but I trick my mind and it's all good. But it's like everyone feels so entitled to an immediate response. And I feel like it's a very important boundary to set. And it's very personal how those boundaries are set, whether it's like you have do not disturb on and that's life, or whatever it is. But it's just like, it's okay to be like, I'm not going to look at that right now. I'm not going to respond to that email. I'm not going to respond to that text. I'm not going to pick up the phone just because you're calling. And yeah, it's just really tough, because some people do not respect those boundaries. But then it's almost like you need to enforce them even harder if that's the case.
Yeah, totally. And just even communicate them, you know, like I actually think this becomes a big thing in the dating app culture and dating in general lately, where a lot of getting to know somebody in like those early stages is done through text and through apps and stuff.
Yeah.
But while you were talking, I actually just had a recent experience where I was talking to one guy, hitting it off pretty good on, say, Thursday night. And then it started getting like 10 p.m. and I was like, hey, I don't want to be messaging people that I've not met and stuff. Like, I just have this boundary, like we're talking about, of messaging guys after a certain time on dating apps. So I was like, I'll just respond to him in the morning. I mean, I did kind of like, we were like messaging back and forth live moment, but when I opened it in the morning, he had unmatched me. And I was like, is this because I didn't respond right away? Like, I don't understand. And I told my friend this and she's like, no, like maybe he like deleted the app by accident or like deleted the app in the middle of the conversation. But I'm like, I don't know. Like we were like having good back and forth, but yeah, I go to respond like not even maybe 8-10 hours later because I was like, hey, it's getting late. I'm going to do my wind down routine, you know, message him later. And then I went to message and he was gone. But I also remember another, not even situationship, but in the past where people will literally say things like, oh, are you too busy to talk to me? Or like, oh, and it's like,
what the heck?
I have my own life going on over here. Or like, I can't just drop everything because you messaged me. Like, I don't know. So I think what you're saying, Tag, though, about enforcing your own boundaries or communicating them, like, since I am a little bit more confrontational than the average person, or I can be, I'm very much like, hey, look, like, I'm sorry, I can't respond right away kind of thing. Yeah. But it is a very weird thing where, to your point, I think this has just become normalized and like people don't even realize that they expect this, but then they do, or you feel pressure that they do. I don't know. It's very bizarre, but I think that instant gratification, you're definitely onto something, and that like applies to messaging response time too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think if you're listening and you're like, this applies to my life, like I always text people back because I feel bad and I'm overwhelmed by my phone, we can give some sort of like tips and tricks on how to do a digital detox. I think this is something I like to do every spring, and it is like spring cleaning my phone kind of, and it's sort of like a phone reset. And the idea is to start by cleaning out your phone, and this is like removing unnecessary apps. I love trying an app. This will show how nerdy I am. The App Store used to have a charts that was like the most downloaded apps. Yeah. And I'd be like, okay, let's try them all out. What's going on with the apps? For now, I'm like, I wish I had that kind of time on my hands. But so I'm like, if I hear about some cool app, I'm downloading it, I'm looking at it. And sometimes I'm doing it for work, but it just means that my phone gets so overwhelming. I have pages and pages. So it's like, first, I will remove all unnecessary apps. I'll go through and make sure I've got notifications off for pretty much every single app, except for things where I'm getting messages. So it's like texts and Facebook DMs, and that's pretty much it. I'll even go through and clean out my photos sometimes, clean out contacts, clean out inbox and texts, and just get my phone organized and in a place where it's not stressful to look at. You can also be applying this to like your computer or whatever, but I feel like we're talking about phones mainly for this. Another thing I really like to do is set like a new background. And we have lots on our Patreon page if you're looking for some cool like desktop backgrounds or those sorts of things. And a lot of time I'll just make like my phone background on Pinterest or find like a cool picture I like. And then it's like I will set a goal related to my screen time. So this January, I set a goal not to use my phone before bed. And then I'll use the tools built into my phone. So I use like the Screentime feature and the bedtime feature thing that are built into iPhones and be like, okay, my goal is not to use it before bed. So I'm setting it so that it turns on automatically and it takes the choice out of my mind, because sometimes you're scrolling and you don't realize, oh, it's 10:30, I'm supposed to be in
Mhm.
bed. But if you have your phone set to do it, problem solved. So I feel like those are like the 101s, the steps you do right at the beginning if you want to do a digital detox.
Yeah, I love that so much. And the turning off notifications is actually something that was huge for me as well, where especially if you work on your phone and especially if you work in social media, getting a notification every time one of your clients or one of the accounts you're logged into gets a
Oh,
like, a
yeah.
comment. Like it's important, but at the same time, it's not so important that you need to be nudged every
Yeah.
time. And there's a documentary about what is it? The Social Dilemma, something like that, where it's all about social media and the negative impact it has on people. It goes into depth about, you guys probably know, it was like very, very popular a few years ago. They go into like talking about the negative repercussions of the like button. They have the guy who like invented the like button on the
Oh.
documentary, and he's like, yeah, man, I had no idea this was gonna,
Yeah.
people would be risking their lives to get likes on an Instagram photo. Like, it's nuts. But anyways, in this documentary, they have this visual of a notification essentially and why notifications exist. And it's to get your attention. And then once it gets your attention, it's going to hold your attention for a long period of time. And as soon as you clue in, oh God, I shouldn't be looking at this, or oh, this is taking up too much of my time, you turn it off, then you get the next notification. And it's just
Right.
literally trying to keep going. And when I saw that, I was like, why the heck am I letting my technology demand my time and attention,
Yeah.
and not even realize it? So I, was like you, went through, turned off all my notifications, especially for social media. Now I think I'm similar to you, where it's really just text. I think I still get email notifications, but most of the time I don't even look at them. So I think that's a big thing. And then I think, speaking of notifications and apps, things like that, another big thing, you talked, I think, a bit about work-life balance at one point. But this is another big, big, big thing. This is more for people who aren't like the content creator girlies and, things like that, which we had previously been talking about. But more so, I use Outlook and Microsoft Teams. I used to use Slack at my old job. Like, not having those notifications on because I don't want them to be pinging me outside of work hours and then me thinking about work, or just being like drawn in by those notifications. I think definitely turning those notifications off. But for me, I take it even a step further because I'm very intense and extreme. I don't even have those apps on my phone.
Yeah.
And the times I put them on my phone, it's because I'm stepping out of the office on work time and I want to be contactable, but I'm never keeping those on my phone to even tempt myself to look at them outside of work hours. So I think that's a big thing people struggle with. And again, I think there's a lot of pressure people feel. Like, I remember actually at my last job, our director of our media team said, like, just put Slack on your phone, like, just for emergencies, like in case you need to reach out to the team. And I said to my boss, like, I'm really sorry, but I refuse to do this. Like, I have your phone number. If an emergency comes out, I'll text you. I'm not going to go to Slack. So I don't know. I think, again, just setting your boundaries and enforcing them is big, but I think it's especially big for work-related notifications and apps and things like that.
Yeah. See, if my job said that, I'd be like, then you should buy me a work phone and I'll put it on that.
Totally. Yeah. And what's funny, actually, when I worked, what was my role? I don't know. I guess I was an assistant marketing manager before I went to my last job. I had a work phone, and it was nice because, well, it was funny because I carried around 2 iPhones at all times, and they were stacked on top of each other. So like anytime I set down my 2 phones beside me, and it was great because I could separate it. Like, for instance, when I went for dinner with my friends, I would just take my one phone, like I would leave work at home, but it was still like that. But the fact I have a work phone sets the precedent
that you're available.
They can contact me anytime they want, right? And it's like, no.
Yeah.
I do think that's changing a lot, but it still can be like a big mental thing for you to control, I guess, especially on your own personal device. But Anyways, all of that being said, another big thing that I'm a big fan of, you mentioned the sleep mode and I think do not disturb mode,
Yeah.
but this is another thing that I've really started to implement through the workday especially. And why I've started doing this, it's even though I get limited notifications, even if it's just a text, I'll be like deep into a work project or like into responding to an email and I'll see my phone light up right beside my computer and I turn, look at it, respond to the message. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm on Instagram. I'm like, my brain is opening apps that are so routine when I open my phone that then I'm like, wait, what am I doing? Oh, and then I go back to work and I'm like, wait, I've totally lost the thought I had on this work project or what I was going to say in this email. And it's like, it just becomes so routine that, again, you don't even know what you're doing. So just don't even give yourself the opportunity to like fall into those routine patterns, especially when it's at a time you don't want those patterns happening, like during work hours or something like that. So I'm a big fan of do not disturb. I've seen many times people say do not disturb is a lifestyle and I could not agree more. It truly is. Even when I go to my parents' house, I'm like, I'm in some little fantasy world. Nobody can contact me. Like, I don't care what's going on back home.
Yeah.
Like, in Toronto, like, I'm just living on do not disturb life and it is so liberating. But then the last thing I was going to say, which you also did mention too, Tag, but working screen-free time into your daily routine. So if it's not going on your phone before bed, I honestly think this is actually why my screen time is fairly low, because versus thinking about it, screen time, like screen-free time in my routine, I feel like I'm more diligent with screen time in my routine. So I'm very like no screens in my morning and night routine. My phone is also locked, like you were saying, with the sleep mode. It's all preset. My alarms sync to that, things like that. But I'm actually very like, at lunchtime, I will scroll on my phone. After work, I will scroll on my phone. And before my night routine starts, I'll scroll on my phone.
Right.
But like these are designated times throughout the day that I can and can't be on my screen or my phone specifically. Most of the time I'm still on my computer or watching TV. But anyways, on my phone. And I find like that really helps. And again, knowing we are creatures of habit, you fall into those patterns and routines quite easily where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm starting my night routine and I know that my phone isn't an important part of this. And eventually you're going to even stop reaching for your phone. So also wanted to just shout that out as probably the most powerful thing, I think, to focus on if you're looking to reduce your screen time.
Yeah, totally agree. There are also so many like apps and things out there now that are to help you with screen time. I like to keep it simple. I use the built-in stuff that comes on my phone, but there are apps that are like you can set. So I think this is especially good if you say only find that you're spending all your time on TikTok. It's like you can set it so that you can only open TikTok 5 times a day. So then it's like you're being intentional about when you do it. Or there are apps where every time you click an app, you have to wait 5 seconds before it opens. And so it's like it gives you a minute to be like, do I actually need to be looking at Instagram right now, or am I just clicking it because I'm already on my phone? And all sorts of things. There was an app I was using in January and you got more allowed screen time the more steps you took. So it was like if you reached 5,000 steps, then you get to have an hour on TikTok. 6,000, it's an hour and 10 minutes and those sorts of things. So there's like so many resources out there depending on what your goals are and what you're struggling with.
Yeah. At first I was like, what do you mean what steps you're taking?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like
Physical
physical
steps.
steps. That's so interesting. Yeah. I also just wanted to acknowledge how funny, but how amazing it is that you would download all the apps that were trending. I think that is the most taken thing I've ever heard. That's so funny.
I don't even know.
So I'm like, if there's one girl who knows the apps are like out there, it's her.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think I just am excited about technology, which is like, obviously, like we're saying all these negative things about it, but there are great things. So I'm like, I'm not anti-social media. I'm not anti-technology.
No.
Like, I think it's great that for me, I get to hear so many different people's perspectives, which I don't think I would be able to hear if I wasn't on
Yeah.
social media. Like I get to discover new music, new movies. I get to be creative myself. Like there are all these good things. It's just they're good if you are doing them with intention and not brainlessly doing
Yes.
it.
Yes. Everything is good in moderation. Yeah. And this is no exception.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, a fun place maybe to wrap up this episode is just some rapid firing. Okay, girls, if you're telling me not to be on my phone, what can I do instead? What can I do to fill that time? So I love that we were just talking about steps, because I think probably one of the best things you can do or replace the amount of time that you spend on your phone would be taking care of yourself. And a big thing or big part of this is getting fresh air, getting outside, getting some sunshine on your skin. Also maybe getting in some movement, if that means going for a walk, going for a run, going for a hike. If you don't want it to turn into like a form of exercise, then maybe you're just going to the park and people watching. Or if you have a garden or, you know, just potted plants outside. Like through the summer, I have a little balcony area and I will leave my phone inside. This is typically at my lunch hour, especially during like a busy, stressful work day. I'll leave my phone inside, go out on my balcony and just tend to my flowers, water them, eat my lunch out there and watch like the characters that walk by my house. Like it's just so nice. Like it's a little escape. So definitely recommend getting outside, getting in some movement. If you feel like you need something to hold you more accountable to movement, maybe it's booking a workout class. And if you're somebody who takes your phone into a workout class and is on your phone in a workout class, please stop. Yeah, it is so annoying because there's people like me that go to a workout class with the intention of it being an hour of me time where nobody can reach me. I don't need to be thinking about anything. I'm not ingesting news and information and content. I'm just focused on doing something for myself. So please leave your phones outside the workout class. And again, maybe sign up for one if you need that accountability of like a dedicated time in your schedule where you're leaving your phone outside in a different room. I also think doing things to relax, like I think, you know, obviously working out is a form of like productivity or ways to be productive rather than being on your phone. Yeah. Maybe actually before I move away from productivity, I'll talk about you could be cleaning. Like when I think about my weekly routine, the Saturday afternoon that I spend cleaning is all screen-free time, which is really great. So I feel like that could be spring cleaning for you, but it could also just be like spending an hour or two cleaning out your closet, something like that. You could also maybe try baking or cooking a new recipe. Maybe you're on your screen looking up the recipe, but maybe you print it out, you know, and just like turn that into intentional screen-free time. But I think outside of this whole needing to be productive when you're not on your phone, like I think that this is actually part of the reason why people scroll so much is because they need that escape and they need time away from reality and like time to decompress, but they go on their phones and scroll on their phones as a way to kind of like pass the time during that relaxing time. So just a few ideas, which might be obvious, but instead of scrolling, maybe you pick up a book, and a physical book at that, not just a Kindle or something like that. But yeah, pick up a physical book. A big thing here is get a library card. If you aren't wanting to buy a whole bunch of physical books, I don't blame you, but library cards are having their moment, I would say. So that would be a great way to get your hands on a physical book. You could also play a game. Maybe it's a board game or a card game, doing a puzzle if you're wanting to do something independently, or picking up a new hobby. So I think this could be arts and crafts or DIY projects, which we were talking about a few weeks ago, but it could also be something like crocheting, embroidery. It could be taking a pottery class or anything like that. I think having hobbies is a really great way to spend your time rather than always scrolling on your phone.
Yeah, I love that. Those are all great suggestions.
Thanks.
Well, I think that's where we'll leave it for this week. Obviously, listening to podcasts is sort of screen related, but also you could be walking or something like that while you're listening. So I'll allow it. And in case you want to see when we put out new episodes, make sure you're following us and subscribe to us. They come out Tuesdays at 1 a.m. if you want to be the first person to listen. you can make that a priority, I guess. In between that, you can follow us on social media. We're at Our Golden 20s on pretty much all of the platforms. And the best way to show your support for the podcast is by subscribing to our Patreon. We have lots of fun content up there, as well as all the episodes get released there early, ad-free. So thanks to all of our current patrons. We love y'all. And I think that's everything for this week. Thanks for listening.
See you next Tuesday.
Bye.